week 14 of the fantasy football season, and here's the top 12 quarterbacks. I'm ranking this week. The first guy, Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Jalen Hurts, another great season here for him in his second season as the quarterback for this Eagle team. And each and every week, it seems like it's 30-plus fantasy points for Jalen Hurts. And this week here, a good matchup at the New York Giants. That their secondary's banged up. Their pass rush really hasn't done much. And Jalen Hurts weekly, he's a guy that's at the top of the game in the scoring, the points, and an MVP candidate. So this week I got him number one. Number two, Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Patrick Mahomes, another great season here. Even without Tyreek Hill, he's putting up the numbers. I know last week wasn't the greatest of fantasy days for him, but after coming off a loss the next game, he usually goes off and has a big game. And this week here, the Denver Bronco defense that's still trying and playing good football, I still think he goes off. And throughout his career, he's owned them in those 2 times per year seeing each other with the Broncos and the Chiefs in the AFC West. So I think Mahomes in this one gets back on track with a big ball game. And him and Travis Kelce have their way in this one. Number 3, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. So the Bills are home versus the New York Jets. In Week 9, they did lose to the New York Jets in MetLife Stadium. And it was a tough loss, and it was a close ball game where Allen actually did hurt the elbow a little bit. But this week here, I think he gets back on track. That Buffalo weather is going to be cold even this ball game. And right here, this Bill team playing at a high level right now. So Josh Allen and Diggs on the same page. James Cook looked good out of the backfield in Singletary. And Allen, coming into the season, he was going anywhere as the top 1 or 2 quarterbacks. But this week here, versus a pretty decent Jet defense, I got him at 3. Number 4, Tua Tagovailoa, the Miami Dolphins. At Tua, he's banged up a little bit with an ankle issue. And if he doesn't play in this game, obviously you're not going to have him ranked. But this week, he's got a good matchup on Sunday Night Football at the Los Angeles Chargers. I pretty much can't stop anyone. And when you got 2 lethal wide receivers like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle here, that's a recipe for success for no matter who the quarterback is. And Tua's getting the ball out quick this season. Him and Hill are hitting at an all-time pace on deep balls and big plays down the field. And this week here versus a leaky Chargers secondary and an indoor game as long as Tua plays, I got him at 4. Number 5, Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Joe Burrow, the legend's growing week in and week out, it seems like, for Burrow. 3-0 now. Career versus Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, coming off that Week 13 victory versus them. So this week here, good matchup versus the Cleveland Browns, a team obviously he's familiar with, versing them twice a season within the division. So Joe Burrow, he's got Jamar Chase back, which is obviously great for his fantasy value, one of the best wide receivers in the league. T. Higgins, he's turning into a number 1 right now over there as well in Cincinnati. And Samaje Perine over Joe Mixon has looked better out of the backfield catching the football. But either way, whoever starts at running back, it's a great weapon. So Joe Burrow up there in passing yards, up there in touchdowns, throwing the top 3. And this week I got him at 5. Number 6, Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. So Herbert, it's been another good season here for him. This week here with a pretty decent matchup versus the Miami Dolphins coming to town in a potential shootout on Sunday Night Football. So Herbert here, since Keenan Allen's been back in the lineup, Allen's had 2 touchdowns in the 3 games he's returned here. And obviously he's the number 1 weapon over there for this Charger team. Mike Williams, maybe he could come back this week. We still don't know for sure if he will or will not. But Justin Herbert, good weapons. Eckler out of the backfield. Gerald Everett back and healthy the last 2 games. And like I said, Keenan Allen. So this week here in a game where it could be a shootout or even them potentially chasing points, I think he has another good game here, Herbert. And I got him at 6. Number 7, Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks. Has a good matchup versus the Cowboys. Best season, obviously, of his NFL career. And when you got 2 stud wide receivers like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, those guys really help yard after catch. They help as top options for your team to get the ball down the field. And Geno Smith, he's making the right decisions, not really turning the football over. The only thing against him, he's holding it too much. But each and every week, it seems like his floor is 23 fantasy points. So this week here versus a mediocre Carolina defense, coming in to Seattle here with the 12th man, I think Geno has another good ball game and a guy you could start with confidence in a pivotal Week 14 for most fantasy owners. Number 8, Kirk Cousins of the Minnesota Vikings. I know last week Cousins, he didn't have to do much in that ball game with the running game doing most of the damage, finding the end zone. So Cousins only 14 fantasy points last week versus the Jets. But this week here, great matchup with the Detroit Lions, a team obviously he's very familiar with within the same division. And the Lions give up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So right here, I think Justin Jefferson explodes for a monster ball game in this one for the Minnesota Vikings. And I think Cousins could go for 250 to 275 with 2 touchdowns in this one. And I got him in number 8, number 9, Jared Goff, staying in the same game. So Jared Goff, he's been a great fantasy quarterback as long as he's at home this season here. And obviously this is a home game for Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions in a potential shootout with the Minnesota Vikings. So a couple weeks ago, we saw them almost knock the Bills off. And then last week, they ran up and down the field on that Jacksonville Jaguar defense. So the third home game in a row, I think Jared Goff could deliver. And this is a ball game where it could be close, no doubt about it, between these two division rivals, and a potential game in the mid-20s to 30s. So this week here, I think Jared Goff has a good ball game. Amon St. Brown's look good. DJ Chark the last couple weeks here is starting to get things going. And maybe the rookie Jameson Williams in his second career game could have a pop game in this one. So I got him at 9. Number 10, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. So this Cowboy team coming off a monster 54-19 victory. Even though Dak Prescott didn't have the biggest of fantasy days. I know he threw for 3 touchdowns in that one. But the turnovers are definitely a concern. But this week here, a good matchup versus the Houston Texans, with the Battle of Texas coming to town here. And Dak Prescott a better, obviously, home quarterback than he is on the road. So this week here, I'm not expecting a monster game out of him because I think the Cowboys are going to have their way early in this one. They're going to run the football down the Texans' throat with Elliott and Tony Pollard, and they're not going to have much out there to throw for Dak Prescott. But I still think 20-plus fantasy points is definitely a possibility. And I got him at 10, number 11, Tyler Huntley of the Baltimore Ravens. So many people might think I'm overrating Huntley here in the rankings, but this guy's got super athleticism, and he's like a Lamar Jackson 2.0 in a way. He's not as good as Lamar Jackson, but he's a guy that's going to run. He's got a big arm as well where he could definitely stretch the field, and he's got a pretty good matchup with the Pittsburgh Steelers that give up a lot of fantasy points this season to quarterbacks. So Huntley, it looks like he's going to be in there with the knee injury for Lamar Jackson. And last year we saw a couple ball games over 30 fantasy points for Huntley. And this week here, I'm not saying he's going to get 30, but 20, 25 fantasy points is definitely a possibility. And I like him just because of the running ability as well. We could give you 9 points just in that. And the 12th and final quarterback I'm ranking this week's Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. Coming off the bye week here, Hollywood Brown and Hopkins as your 2 wide receivers is a great thing to have. I know it's a tough matchup though versus the New England Patriots, and that's why I bumped them down the list just a little bit here is Murray. But Murray's got to start running the football a little bit more to get his fantasy value up. So right now, Kyler Murray's an athletic quarterback. We know he's got the great weapons in Hopkins and Hollywood Brown. But this week here on Monday Night Football, it could be a little bit of a challenge. And you know, Bill Belichick always has a good scheme for these type of quarterbacks with the athleticism. But this week, I got him at 12, so that's the top 12 quarterbacks I'm ranking here for Week 14 of the fantasy football season.